This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. It's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources. It may sound basic, but how we move forward in the age of information is going to be the difference between whether we survive or whether we become some kind of fucked up dystopia. Thank you, and stay woke, bitches.
Whoa, okay, this is not just text. This is not simple stuff. This is really difficult. How do you prove that that wasn't actually truth? So the landscape is really kind of interesting. So this lot is compounded by the rise of ignorance. I have a theory that I'd like to share with you, that if a government neglects the education system, the United States is what you get. And I am not kidding. If people become uneducated in the grand scale of things, it becomes really, really dangerous. And this is a good observation by Asimov. So here's an example. And so this is really worrying, but to give you an extreme couple of examples, most of the graduates from the Ivy League don't know where the seasons come from. And we've had really interesting people stay with us who have their own companies, PhDs in AI, the whole works, and they don't know where tides come from. This is a sort of very interesting. So here's just one example. And by the way, there are a lot of British examples, but this one's a cracker.
If you met someone from Amsterdam, what nationality would they be?
I have no idea. Amsterdamian.
Amsterdamian.
Okay, and so it's now, I think, even worse than this. We have a lot of the time people deride expertise in education. So even one of our own government ministers got in, the jaunt. People are fed up with experts. Right. If you want to see failure and you think that experts are a problem, wait till you try ignorance. So here's some things that we don't generally recognize, that lies and fake news, they're ever so easy to distribute. They're on your screen in a click. No thinking is required. A lie takes no thinking whatsoever. It reinforces prejudices. It plays to what you already believe if it's focused. But actually, the truth takes a lot of thought and consideration. So here's the balancing act. Right at the bottom, we've got all our fundamental stuff. Thousands of millions of man-hours spent discovering the realities of this universe and the truth and establishing the fundamentals. Engineering and technology has got us to where we are now. And the interaction between these two levels is really interesting, because very often engineers discover things that are not true, and we go back to the scientists and the whole cycle continues. But as we come up the stack, the dependency gets more critical and the stack becomes less and less stable. Right at the top, we've got government, media, and society. And the propagation of lies is that way up. So things become less true the further up the stack you get. But if that top layer cracks, the whole thing will just crumble. And so this is not so good. So we need some countermeasures. And so on one level, I'd like to purge all the errors on the internet, because the internet is sort of 95% things that are wrong, incorrect. We need to flag the liars and the lies. We need to publish veracity ratings and so on. And the key enabler is a truth engine. And so the problem I'm addressing is, can we build one? If you want to get an engineer excited, come up with a proposition like this. So the big questions are, could we accurately, reliably identify truths, half-truth, distortions, and the like? And can we get some kind of metric Can we make judgment calls fast enough? And can we block or attenuate? And can we continually cleanse the net? And can we educate society to the risks? Well, and I do believe we can do that and that. I don't know that we can do it fast enough. Don't know that we can actually attenuate it or take out all the pernicious stuff, or whether we can continually cleanse the net fast enough. It's a huge machine, and I don't think we can educate society, not much less than 1 or 2 generations. It's a long-term thing. So these are the sort of challenges. So we have to think in a different way, and so let me give you an example of truth. Truth is not fixed. There is no way you can go and find a truth that will last possibly forever, apart from the fact we're all going to die, and that may come into question in about another 150 years. We may not have to die, who knows. But the world started off, it was obviously flat, and then it became some kind of sphere, and then it was flat, and then it was sphere, and then it became an oblate spheroid, and now it's a dynamic oblate spheroid, and this is the best model we've got. But the flat earthist still exists. People still believe the earth is flat, no matter how much evidence you put up there. And some people believe that the moon landing never happened, it was all done in a studio, and there's all kinds of conspiracy stuff. And so it is a big problem. Lies come in many different categories. We all lie. We can't help it. We make mistakes. And sometimes we tell a lie not to hurt somebody's feelings. You know, all this sort of stuff is subsumed into our culture. It makes it a very, very complex job to do anything about it. And these are the experiments that have been reasonably successful so far. And we need to do something much more deep. And so in the toolkit of stuff we've got, what can we do? It really is mission critical. I have no idea how long it's going to take, but we ought to be able to do it in 3 or 4 years. But without truth, we will not survive, and probably our planet won't either. And we get in a hand on how big the problem is. It does look sort of tractable, and we might be able to crack it. So I think it's worth a go. So as an engineer, what is it I can actually lay my hands on? I don't want to build anything if I can go get something. And so this is what we need. We need to be able to get the content and extract the meaning. And a lot of that stuff already exists in inference engines. We need to fact check. We need to look at the behaviors and the history. And we need to have a look at the trends to see where things are going. So these are the basic tools. And we've got sort of a green tick on one, and as you come down the stack, this bit at the bottom doesn't exist. The rest of it either really exists or it's a bit flaky and needs polishing. So I'm looking at the bottom layer. So here are the core questions. This is what I want to know. You know, who's the author? Why did they publish? Who do they work for? What's their reputation? Are they paid? Are they sponsored? Do they have a following? And so on. I want to know what their motivation is, what they're saying. So I then want to corroborate all of what they said, and I want to fact check. And can we automate this? And so here are some of the difficulties. When you see lots and lots of reports on something, it generally starts off with no more than 5 or 6 primary sources. That's hit the internet, and then everybody started tweeting it, and a lot of news organizations just take what the BBC say and rewrite it, or if they're idle, they just plagiarize it. But then it gets distorted by people who have vested interests in a different kind of picture. And so people sort of associate volume with truth. And very quickly, in this dynamic world that is no longer fixed, you have to remember that the devices are moving, the people are moving, the world is rotating, the time is shifting, but the information is propagating all the time. And so the truth is now highly unstable. It's being distorted dynamically, and you're getting all this on your screen. So errors and distortion and interpretations enter. And the question is, can we identify the primary sources and qualify the reports and disregard all of this noise? So easy to do, fact-checking. There are a lot of organizations that do great fact-checking. The Washington Post is probably the leader, followed by somebody like the BBC. And so, to my great surprise, worldwide there are over 160 worldwide fact-checkers. It's ripe for automation, and there are organizations that are actually integrating these together, and there's a couple here for you to try. These are really quite good. So people like Snopes and what have you are integrated in there. Then there are things like correlation techniques where you get the thousands of feeds and you put them on a couple of axes and you look at the correlation, you can say, well, that's the line of truth. And you carry out analyses and you find that the BBC has got a very good rating, and Bloomberg, and then Fox News, and that's a typo, that should be Breitbart. I always wanted to be an engineer, now I are one. And Twitter is not worth a dime. So sometimes you get surprises when you investigate things, but Wikipedia and Britannica are about the same, 80% accurate, because the information's moving quickly. If you go to all the professional institutions, you rarely get anything more than about 45% true, because it's moving. But this is the best truth we got at that time. Most people don't understand that. So this is a function of truth being dynamic. So a library of lies, does a library of lies exist? Not in a comprehensive form, but the movement has started. And so organizations are starting to build, and Dave's web of lies is interesting. The New York Times has got a whole library of President Trump's lies and so on. So they're not hard to compile, but they need to be coordinated and integrated. And there are a few human, legal, and political things slightly in the way that cause grief. And so the analysis is, could we, in some way, have a truth test on any item and make sense of it? Could we automate it? And the answer is yes. So let me give you an example. Chernobyl. People were talking about 600,000 deaths. 31 have died to date. Fukushima. Headlines like they're digging pits to put all the radioactive bodies in were actually in the headlines. This is ridiculous. And so 1,368 related to the nuclear power plant, nothing to do with radiation. One worker is acknowledged to have died so far from radiation. Oh, and by the way, 15,000 people were killed by the water. This is gross. So these are really unreliable news sources. And by the way, they never correct anything, because this is about selling paper. It's not about communicating the truth. So these are difficult, easy to find, but to them, truth doesn't matter, and it's a worry. So what we need is this, a delayed timeline. We look at these people on the top line, they make a statement, and then we look at it in delayed time and say, was it corrected? What was the truth figure? If they declared that 5,000 aircraft flew, or 200 people were shot by the police, what's the final number? How accurate were they? And if we keep doing that, we can establish some aggregated trust rating. And this is not hard to do. And what happens with time is that the degree of lie comes down. More and more accuracy comes in. So if you look at reports 1, 2, 3, 4, it gets better and better and better. And this allows you to come up with numbers for the reliability of organizations. So let me give you some manually extracted, in great pain, numbers. So the Washington Post, about 98.4% truth, BBC 98.2, and so on. These are very reliable sources, discounted by people who have a different kind of agenda. And the question is, can we automate that? And the reality is the only tool we've got capable of doing this is AI engines, which is where we're actually going to have to go with this. And so there are a few worries. So here's the truth engine. This is the stuff. that we've actually got. All of that is in good shape. This stuff is sort of available, but not any really good way that is useful yet. But this is the stuff that we need to build right at the back end. That's where I'm looking. And I want to see if we can build this bit. Then I'll have a truth engine that works. Human bias is what worries me. And the way to overcome human bias is to have several teams building truth engines, let them loose, and then compare. And then you can iron out the human bias and then let the AI go. I just love this quote. You can see the manifestation of that in our society already writ large. So here we go. You probably remember this.
What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
Whoa. So, if we do have a choice, are we going to take the red pill or are we going to take the blue pill? So, you do nothing, you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You build a truth engine and you stay in Wonderland, and I might be able to show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. But remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. Thank you. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? I'm here all day, and I'm quite happy to enter into discussion, but now is your chance to pose a difficult question. You've either got the answer or you're stunned.
So, how do we deal with the fact that different people... Good running, Neil. How do we deal with the fact that different organisations will then create their competing truth engines, some of which might be biased, deliberately biased?
You can only sort that out by having as many truth engines as you can muster and isolate the ones that are biasing. And we've got this problem, by the way, throughout the AI community, whether it's, in the United States, there are now AI systems that are taking the evidence, making a judgment, and issuing a sentence. So they're automating the legal system to that extent. The UK has a massive problem in that we don't have enough barristers to read all the stuff. And AI systems are going to have to be used to read all the evidence and then filter it. And when people build AI systems, human bias creeps in. And even if we don't build them and they build themselves, the AI engines build themselves by observing human behavior, so bias gets in there. So the only way I can see of getting rid of that is to have sufficient of them, arm wrestling and weeding out the really biased ones. As an engineer, there's a sort of edict. Perfection is the enemy of progress. It really is. Is it good enough is the question. Will it do the job? We have a problem and we're going to die anyway. So can we find a solution that saves us even though it's not a perfect one? So the upside of AI is so enormous we can't ignore it. And we have to use it. We have no choice. We do not have the mental capacity to deal with the problems that are now are in front of us. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Gentlemen there.
Where do you see the leadership in solving this problem?
I don't. That's the terrifying thing. I don't see any leadership.
Because it sort of reminds me of global warming. We all know it's happening, but there's nobody leading the solution.
Correct.
So are we doomed to fail with this?
Well, I had this discussion last night with an academic. What terrifies me is I think that a lot of stuff is going faster than human society can respond. We are the damn problem, period. And whilst we're arguing about the niceties, the world is going to hell in a handbasket, and that makes me feel very uncomfortable. If I can see that we can solve things in a given time. I mean, first became aware of the global problem, I think it was 1974 with the first publication from the Club of Rome. Oh, crikey, this is a terrific model. And of course they were decried by politicians and business community for a long, long time. It's got very real. And people are now seeing what happens when you raise the temperature by 1 degree. It's going to get much worse. Any other questions? There's a gentleman over here.
It seems to me that the establishment of truth is also dependent on those receiving the message. So in other words, even the truth will be ignored by the ignorant.
Yep.
So I wonder, are the other vital truth engines possibly the education system and maybe even parenting?
Yeah, I wish I had the answer to that. I wouldn't be stood here if I did. It's a real worry. I get young, I give 1 or 2 lectures a year at various schools, everything from schools that are failing to schools that are excellent. And I get young children telling me that they don't believe the moon landing, it was all a hoax done in a film studio, or they don't believe in global warming. So this stuff is sort of getting into the minds of the young people, and the education system that we have is not equipped to deal with any of this. And it's a real worry. I mean, it's a real worry. And the snag is, if the population isn't educated, then the parents can't do anything about it, because they don't have the ability. Very often the kids are going on the internet, the parents either don't know what they're looking at or don't care what they're looking at, and so they pick all of this stuff up. And I don't know how we fix this, but it needs a concerted effort. Any further? I'm looking at the chairman here for him to get off the stage, but one last question if we've got one. I don't think we got a last question. Okay. I'll see you out there for lunch. Thank you.
Well, I think the truth is that was a